My first theory video, except that one, was about FNaF 4's plushies, and I brought up what I still consider to be good points about what the plushies could represent and what that interpretation could point to, ultimately concluding that the crying child witnessed the missing children incident. Now, I knew the conclusion wouldn't reach everybody. It requires that this incident happened in 1983, which, from what I can tell, is not what most theorists believe. In the comments, the most common counterargument was that in the Fright's book Into the Pit, an event very similar to the MCI is depicted happening in 1985. However, I disagree with this approach to my video. The point wasn't to prove a theory using a piece of evidence that can be overwritten, it was to point out details that weren't commonly pointed out, and then provide my conclusion. If the MCI happens in 1985, then these details and observations don't just disappear, they probably have another explanation. There are reasonable ways to look at this. There have been compiled lists of details from 1983 that seem to be predicting the future in a way, and this could just be one of those. They could all fit under the same explanation, whatever that explanation may be, but it probably isn't all pointing to witness MCI. And in fact, I don't even believe that's true anymore. I agree the MCI happens in 1985 now, though I still think Into the Pit, therefore 1985 is a bit of an oversimplified view. The bite victim witnessing it is the only reason to believe that it happens in 1983, so if that's untrue, then it's really up in the air, and the evidence from Into the Pit and the full-length Charlie novels, which both put it in 1985, is somewhat weak evidence, but it would be the only indication of when it happens at all, so we're inclined to trust it. What brought me to believe that the bite victim didn't witness the MCI? Well, as usual, it's for unusual reasons. Me believing the majority consensus for unpopular reasons is becoming a bit of a pattern. In FNaF 4, 2 days before the party, we're stuck at Fredbear's again as usual, but we can leave this time, and we walk home. On our way, we talk to a few people. The Plush Trap Kid, the Pigtail Girl, the Laughing Kid, the Toy Girl, and the Balloon Kid, in that order. The odd one out here is the Laughing Kid, who is much older, most likely a teenager, and seems to be the same one who wears a Freddy mask during the actual birthday party. So if we take him away, we're left with 4 children. Each of these children has some correspondence, believe it or not, to FNaF 3's secret cake minigames. The Balloon Kid and BB's Air Adventure have obvious parallels, as he's a dead ringer for BB, and maybe this is a stretch, but the car nearby has the same palette as the level itself. The Plush Trap Kid is holding a Spring Bonnie toy, which may connect him to Requip 666. The Toy Girl and Chica's party are connected via Toy Chica, as her tiny toy Chica is famously missing her beak just like the one in FNaF 2, with specific attention called to this by Scott himself. The girl's association with Toy Chica is already there. Finally, the Pigtail Girl has the loosest connection to Stage 01, but she does spread rumors about a child going missing, and a child going missing is what we see in Stage 01. What took me from this being a stretch to it being full-on intended is that these minigames are in order, but they're reversed. If you were to walk backwards from the house, you'd go through BB's Air Adventure, Chica's Party, Stage 01, the Requip 666 minigame, and then you'd arrive at Fredbear's, which represents the final minigame, Happiest Day. We already know that Fredbear's is an inversion of Happiest Day, but the entire neighborhood is representative of what leads up to it. Again, reversed. If you have a good memory, you might have realized I skipped a minigame, Mangle's Quest. That's because Mangle's Quest 2 is an odd one out. It ends in you obtaining the cake which you then give to the other children. It's the only one that doesn't end with a child getting a cake and being put into Happiest Day, and doesn't correspond to a child in FNaF 3 either. A little known fact about Happiest Day is that it can be accessed on any night, but it doesn't have any kids at first besides the sad birthday kid. The minigames where you give cake each correlate to one child being invited to the party. Freddy and BB's Air Adventure, Chica and Chica's Party, Foxy in Stage 01, and Bonnie in Requip 666. Which means, stick with me here, these children who represent these minigames also correspond to the missing children. They are the missing children. I am really satisfied with this theory. The connections between the FNaF 3 minigames and FNaF 4 kids being in the exact right order, in my opinion, can't be a coincidence. Quick detour, the tiny toy Chica might be missing her beak because the girl who owned that toy went on to possess real toy Chica. Throughout FNAF 2, we're told the new animatronics were built using pieces of the old ones, and if the metal is what's carrying the soul, dating all the way back to the haunted endoskeleton in the first game, then this would no doubt transfer the souls as well. And no, the toys are not possessed by the Save Them kids. The whole point of the Save Them minigame was that the puppet couldn't save the children. The withers and the toys share spirits, hence why Toy Chica and Withered Chica both hang out by the paper pals, and why Toy Chica removed her beak. When she was alive, as a child, she had a toy version that was broken in the same way. Now, if you have an even decent memory, you'll know that they're not just the missing children anymore. They actually all have names. The balloon kid is Gabriel, who possesses Freddy. The plush trap kid is Jeremy, who possesses Bonnie. And this is actually somewhat fitting, as Jeremy Fitzgerald's week in FNAF 2 is what's mirrored in the Fun with Plush Trap minigame. Then there's the toy girl, Susie. We've actually seen Susie before, in Fruity Maze, where she looked shockingly similar to the toy girl. Blue eyes, a similar hair shape, a red bow on the same side of the hair, and a pink shirt. They're not exactly the same, her hair is more brownish, like in Coming Home, and her skin's a bit darker, but hair and skin tone inconsistencies are also present on the older brother, and I'm not really worked up about this discrepancy considering Scott drew this sprite, but didn't draw this, and then wrote a description of the girl in the fourth closet that was meant to tie back to Fruity Maze. Honestly, Susie being the toy girl solidifies this theory in my opinion. It's even mentioned offhandedly in Coming Home that Susie has a lot of dolls. It just fits. It's an instance where these two theories about the missing children don't conflict, they build on each other. Who's the last one? Oh yeah, the pigtail girl. Her name is Fritz. Welp. Fritz, which is typically short for Frederick, is not a usual girl's name, and the missing child Fritz is depicted as a boy in the fourth closet. However, consider that if this theory is true, she'd possess Foxy, who is the animatronic most associated with confusing gender lore. Mangle's identity was so confusing it still makes theorists' heads spin. Funtime Foxy confidently embraced any identity that came her way, and Roxanne Wolf is quite frankly a trans femme icon. Scott was in the peak Mangle gender debate when he made FNAF 4. He put Mangle in a girl's room just to fan the flames. It's possible that, if he were to include the missing children in FNAF 4, he'd make the one who possesses Foxy, eventually Mangle, a girl, and eventually one named Fritz. I'm very willing to believe that this was all intentional. If it wasn't, then the minigames just happened to line up in order. The toy girl, who would have been paired with Chica anyway, just so happens to share design similarities to Susie, and Fritz, the one with the confusing gender, just so happens to be, in this theory, possessing the animatronic who's known for having their gender messed with. That said, Pigtail Girl is definitely the weak link in the chain here. She's got tenuous links to Stage 01, hardly any connections to Fritz, and the Pigtail Girl has so many other theories about her with evidence that more directly relates to who she is. I've tried seeing if the laughing kid could be Fritz, but trust me, that doesn't quite work either. Still, everything's strong enough as to where I consider it a small downside to an otherwise undeniable conclusion. And I hope it's obvious why this theory is incompatible with the children dying before FNAF 4. Although I used to reconcile the two by asserting that these children are ghosts, using Fazbear Frights as a precedent, and using the fact that these children say they're going to the party and aren't actually seen there as a reason to be suspicious of them even without the books. But eventually the weakness of that argument caught up to me and I got tired of explaining it to people. What do you guys think? For me, there's too many things that line up for the theory not to be true. Let's recap. The FNAF 4 kids, minus the one who isn't a kid, line up with the FNAF 3 cake minigames in reverse order, all leading up to Fredbear's, which is in itself a reversed Happiest Day. This suggests the park kids are the kids which correspond to each minigame, giving each of them identities, and we can combine this with knowledge from Pizzeria Simulator to deduce their names, which actually aid the theory in the case of a few of them. Therefore, in conclusion, these 4 kids are 4 of the 5 missing children, and therefore they are alive during FNAF 4. And because Witness MCI was the only real reason to stick to MCI 83, I'm now in the MCI 85 club, which honestly seems like a pretty luxurious club. You guys got snacks in here? Thanks for watching, everybody. Like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more. I've got some big theory videos coming soon, and I've even got a couple of collaborations in the works. See you all next time.